Thanks, John. Yeah, I'm going to ask people to either put their questions in the chat
Right.
or raise their hands if they want to, and then I'll read it out for you.
Okay.
Better for people to ask, groups.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Well, then just raise your hands or maybe just unmute yourselves and go for it. The floor is open. But first, thank you very much, John. That's good prep for my Nevertwell trip. Okay. Hand from Jen Potgieter. Go for it, Jenny.
You muted, Jennifer.
Sorry. John, I just want to know, as crew members, if we are taking photographs in the field, what particular features must we photograph clearly to get an ID?
Oh dear.
Just the main one.
Specimen.
Yeah, I would say in general, if you can photograph the front view of the flower and the side view of the flower, so we can see how long the tube is, and we can see the bracts, because they're often important for many of the genera, and details of the leaves as well. So I know most of the pictures that come up on the INAT are just like a front view of the flower. That's missing out a lot of the information, because leaf shape, hairiness of the leaves, and that sort of information is often critical. I know that I'm telling you up front that in general, like Romulia, without the corm, it's basically impossible to name them. So no matter how many nice photos you take of the flowers, it's one just can't do anything without the corms, and the information on the corms is almost microscopic. It's how the little fibers look. So even if you've managed to dig it out and wash it and take a photo, it's probably not enough. So there's a kind of no-win situation. Without a specimen, we can't really get a full name. But in general, if you can take a side view as well and showing the bracts, that'll go a long way, and then the leaves as well.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a help. Thank you.
Good. I don't see any other hands. Now's your chance for everyone. John, is there something that you would like to a challenge or anything that you want to put to the group? I mean, we know that Ishmael and Rian and a couple of other people have still been finding the new things. Where do you think still needs to be looked at properly?
It's an interesting question. You know, we did that analysis of species that were discovered in this Cape floristic region since 1753, and the number of species discovered since then, that's the last 250 years, I suppose, has remained relatively constant, which is bizarre because we thought they would go down, but they have remained. But what is interesting is that the types of species you find that are being discovered have changed. So now the ones that are being discovered are, it doesn't matter what the growth form is. So it's not that it's a fire ephemeral. It's not that it's a geophyte that's now more likely to be found than a shrub. It's the highly localized endemics from inaccessible areas that are the ones that are being found. So essentially, if you want to find a new species, go somewhere that no one else has or can't get to.
Okay, that's a good challenge for people.
Rupert, quick question for John.
Go for it,
John, what's the next closest group related to the Iridaceae, and how close are they, if that is a useful word? In other words, what's the sister? Is there anything approaching a sister group to the Iridaceae?
There is, and it's a small family, and I think it's Iridaceae. So it's kind of some weird family, and it's a very small family, and it's it's interesting because the oldest lineage in Iridaceae is a genus called Isophysis that comprises one species from New Zealand or New Caledonia, New Zealand,
wow.
I think. It looks like what we knew as Spiloxenia capensis, Porridia capensis. That's what it looks like. So it has a star-shaped yellow star-shaped flower with long, thin tepals.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it has a superior ovary, which is unique because all other Iridaceae have an inferior ovary. So some irids evolved something that enabled them to expand hugely because the sister family is really small and didn't get anywhere. And then that said, after Isophysis, the next lineage in Iridaceae is a genus called Pattersonia, which is in Australia, which is also quite small and didn't do very much. And so it looks like what happened is that the family had a sort of Australasian origin and then kind of crept into Africa and then exploded. And we don't have any idea why, but none of those earlier lineages have corms. So the evolution of this corm and this strange inflorescence type seems to have been a key innovation that enabled them to radiate extensively. And only one group then got into South America.
Yeah, so they sort of stand alone in a way. They're
yes, they don't.
Orphaned,
exactly.
almost orphaned in the plant group. Their relatives are a long way away.
Yeah, exactly. Which I must say is a repeated pattern that we're getting to see in angiosperms, is that you'll get a family or a group that's radiated extensively, and then its sister is a tiny inconspicuous thing that didn't do anything.
Good to know. Thanks. I'm monitoring the questions. So Ruth, if you want to ask that question live rather than me trying to read it out, and then we've got Leandra, Anthony, and Tiller in the queue. So Ruth, go for it. Ruth, you're on mute. There we
Sorry,
go.
waking up my unmute function.
Go for it.
I've just been curious for a very long time when trying to diagnose species with corm traits that you can barely find and barely see. What then actually drove the differences between these species?
You're talking like Romulia?
See that as an, Romulia, Hesperantha. There are many cases.
Yeah, it's a mystery. We have, Peter and I have no idea, no speculation about it at all, because as I say, you'll get the same sort of corm structure evolving in different genera, and in some genera, they don't even do that at all. Gladiolus, the corms are all the same. None of them have woody corm tunics. The freesias are all the same. None of them have woody corm tunics, but then like in Romulia, lots will, and then some will have fibrous. And in Hesperantha, they mostly have woody corm tunics. And so it's a complete mystery. I don't even know what it's linked to, because they don't have the the species with woody corm tunics don't necessarily have very fibrous leaves. So it's not like there's strengthening or thickening tissue in the leaves, which then, because of course, the corms are the base of the leaves.
Right.
So that's not even carried through. So it's a complete mystery. Sorry.
I think that's actually good to know. That to hear it from you, John, so that we don't feel so bad.
No, we know little.
And as you said, this is an extensively researched family.
Yeah.
So we've just got to extrapolate what that means for something like Phylica or the sedges. Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Leandra, do you want to ask your question, please?
Yes, thanks, Rupert. And thanks, John. That was really such a help for figuring everything out here in the peninsula and in Cape Town. In regards to, I was, or not part of, but I know of the excitement when Ishmael discovered the new Murea. And in line with what Rupert said about, like finding new species, I wanted to know, like, does fire or anything like that have anything to do with these species, and do they occur like I think the Morea, that I don't know how many you guys found, but I think there was only one or something like that, or would you find more of them? Are they likely to like, if it's like a rare species or something, do you find more than one? Is that how the family operates, or if you find one, will there be likely more in the area? I don't know if the question is clear.
Yeah, Ishmael and I that area had burned a few years before, so we don't know if there were more the year straight after the fire. I think we were there in the veld as 3 or 4 years old, Ishmael. So we don't know if there was a mass flowering before, earlier, and that we were kind of at the end of the emergence period of these things. But we walked extensively over those lower slopes. Okay, not very far, maybe a kilometer. So potentially there are more populations on those slopes. But in general, irids can be very localized. Not as bad, I think, as some of the Certanthus, but in any event. But when you find that population, there are usually quite a lot of them there. So they're kind of like company.
Yeah.
And yes, the fire thing will bring some species into flower, and so that was likely an issue with the Morea that Ishmael found, but it's not an issue with the Geiseriza that Rian found, because that was in quite old veld. And yes, he didn't find many, and I bet you there are lots there after a fire, but I mean, at least he found some. And then the Moreas that the Flocks and the other nature conservation person found in the Swartberg, again, that veld hadn't been burned. So they will kind of persist, most of them, but there are a few that will only flower the year after a fire. But usually, if you find the population, there are quite a few plants there.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you. Anthony, do you want to go for it?
Yes, hi, thanks, Ishmael. John, my question is more like a follow-up to Jenny and Ruth's questions, which it may have already been answered in a sense, but I just wanted to find out. So some years ago, when I was working sort of in a little resort near Bergville, sort of in the mountains north of Bergville, I used to go hiking and stuff a lot there. And the one day I hiked up this little hill, I'm losing my terminology now. It was like one of these little sort of domes, basalt domes or buttresses. So I hiked up there and I found Esperantha, which was quite unique in where it was growing. So it was growing in this sort of stony ground below overhang in the rock, in a rock formation overhanging it. The water was dripping down and sort of making the stones moist. So it was growing there. And then I took photos of that, posted it to INAT, and there was this big back and forth debate about whether it's a color variation of the Hesperantha baurii, which you find commonly in the area, or if it's something else. So basically my question is, with Hesperantha, is the most important character to photograph, would that be the corm?
The summer rainfall Hesperanthas are dreadful. The taxonomy is not good. And the species are currently distinguished on measurements. So the length of the tube, the length of the style, the length of the anthers. So photographs, from a distance, they all look the same. They're all pink, or there's some white ones. But the corms don't seem to vary. I mean, they're mostly quite closely related, those summer rainfall ones. So the corms are not significantly. So the problem with them is it's very small measurements of floral parts. So as I say, without a specimen showing that we can actually measure, I think you have very little chance of getting decent names on those things. And I mean, I can I can tell you that I know you must have climbed quite high up because the basalt is high up there. When we walk, if you walk on that road from Witsieshoek to the border post, you will pass about 6 hesperanthus. All of them are pink. They're all growing on those granite slopes, some in wet places and some in not such wet places, and some with long tubes and some with medium-sized tubes, some with short tubes, and some pale pink and some medium pink and some bright pink. And so it goes. But if you take a photograph of those things, I mean, I did photograph some and I didn't collect specimens. I struggled to get a name on that thing. Eventually, by a process of elimination, I mean, that is a road that thousands of people have walked along and collected on. So if you find something in some inaccessible slope, who knows what it is? So sorry, your photographs are just not going to do enough. We really need to measure the little bits and pieces on those things.
No, that's good to know. So if I ever go around there in future again, because it wasn't close to the main Drakensberg escarpment, the range there. It was more like in the Inselbergs, sort of south of Harry Smith and north of Bergville, so on the border between KZN and Free State. But if I'm ever around there again, I'll definitely get a specimen because I know more or less where I found it. So yeah,
all right.
thank you.
Then what you should do is pack a paperback novel in your backpack, like a Western or something like that, J.T. Edson, because that paper is really nice and absorbent, and then you can just slip it into the novel and it presses really nicely. And the flower parts don't stick to that paper, so you can easily do that, and then it's not a big deal. You don't have to have press or anything like that. So those little paperback novels, those old ones where that paper was really nice and absorbent, not these modern shiny papers. So go and find one in a junk secondhand bookshop.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Tilla?
Now I'm just worried about time. So John, it's a quick question to say, where are the other places where irids are diverse in the world? I assume it's Turkey and that Mediterranean area. And have they all been as well revised? Would you say the taxonomy for the family worldwide is in a pretty good state or not?
Other big areas of diversity, as you say, are in Eurasia and the Mediterranean and the Middle East. The taxonomy there is a problem because of the accessibility to those areas. So the taxonomy is kind of based on the roadside collectors. And it's difficult to go into places like Iran and Kazakhstan and all those places. So the taxonomy, and it's only iris and crocus. And so there are hundreds of species, but whether they're real or not, I can't say. It kind of depends. There's a lot of parochialism there. So if you are in Armenia, you will recognize a species that someone else may just recognize at subspecies level. So there are lots of little micro species there which may or may not be real. And it's a problem with accessibility. And then the other area of diversification is South America. And again, it's the same problem of access. And so again, I think South Africa is unique in the fact that there's so many people who are interested and who have been out and who have collected in an area of high diversity that we really, really know so much more about the situation on the ground here than they do in the other areas.